Welcome into On Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton, your host. Special guest for this conversation here today is Fozzy Whittaker, former Longhorn, current SEC analyst college football analyst, for ESPN. Fozzy, welcome in. A lot of Longhorns have a lot of fond memories of you, buddy.
I appreciate that. Thanks for having me on.
Well, you're a tremendous. You a lot of guys go from pro football or college football, pro football. Then they go to, a deal where they're talking to fans, whether it's on radio, TV, et cetera. You went to the Longhorn Network and did the post game there for them this past year, a couple of years into it. You're also doing other things as far as it's related to podcasts and whatnot.
Yep.
But tell folks what you're going to be doing this football season, because it's a little bit different.
Yeah. So I was blessed and fortunate enough. I went and actually interviewed for a position. As you all know, Texas is in the SEC. That's what we're doing here, SEC Media Days. What the SEC doesn't allow is third-tier media rights for each individual team. And Texas had their own third-tier media right in the Big 12, which was the Longhorn Network underneath the ESPN umbrella. Now that Texas moved to the SEC, Longhorn Network is no more. It's actually a pretty sad story, man. Our executive director, Andy Wall, she's been the impetus and staple of Longhorn Network. She actually put in a farewell email just yesterday, last day at ESPN. Man, it's extremely it's one of those bittersweet moments, right? It was a combination of things that got me into the industry that I'm in now, but it also means the beginning of something means the end of something, and that's the end of a beautiful thing that helped get me to where I'm at today. But it springboarded my career to now be a college football analyst with ESPN. I did an interview for them at the end of February. I was able to, do well and impress who I needed to impress in that interview. And then I was just blessed by God to be able to still have an opportunity to cover college football, which I think is the greatest sport in the world.
I really do too. I think we're all in agreement that really college football is a special time in a person's life, 18 to 22 years old. You are part of that. And it helps you become part of that, watching a young person go from a kid to a man.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And so that's what a lot of Texas fans remember. And that's what they remember about you a little bit. Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember watching you in a high school all-star game. Man, you may have been 165 pounds
wet.
Dripping wet.
That was wet water.
Yeah. And then, watching you, then you started. I mean, look, I even remember I was like, Fozzy Whittaker is going to run the Wildcat. Is he going to be tough enough to do that? And you didn't just run it. You ran it like a boss. They haven't come back to it since. Nobody's been able to replicate that.
Well,
in Texas.
Roe done a really good job with it.
Yeah.
I got to give my RB some love, and he wearing number 2 as well. So the deuce is wild. So I showed Roe some love on it.
That's good. Well, he did deserve it. Let's talk a little bit about this Texas team and going into the SEC. As a former player at Texas, what are your thoughts about Texas headed to the SEC?
Well, number one, I think this is the best football conference in the country. The initial reason why CDC and all the Board of Regents and everybody associated with making this move made the move was because the level of competition that you're going to receive week in and week out. If you go through Texas's schedule, it may not be as daunting as Florida or as Oklahoma, but there's still no bye week. There's no gimme games within this conference. And I'm not saying that the Big 12 had that. The SEC is just a different animal. And I think the difference really is apparent in the atmosphere. Now, I've been on radio talking about this for the past 2 days with Dusty Dvorak and Chris Budden, who also work with me at SiriusXM and ESPN. We talked about the away game atmospheres. And we understand what it's like playing against A&M at Kyle Field, right? It's unprecedented. It's one of those things that you talk about whenever college football is discussed. Well, that atmosphere, that feeling, that buy-in from the fan base and from the athletic director and from the football team and all those alike, that's almost at every single stadium in the SEC. You talk about going to Neyland in Tennessee, it's there in Knoxville. The Grove, the atmosphere at Ole Miss is there. Jordan Hare, Auburn, it doesn't matter what the record is, it's there. Bryant-Denny, right? The list goes on. Obviously, you can't forget about Death Valley either at Tiger Stadium. It is there. So I think that's the key difference as to what makes the SEC such a different animal and why I think Texas is excited to showcase their environment. DKR is a special beast in and of itself. 2 years ago, Will Anderson, the first pick defensively for Alabama, whenever they played against Texas, he said the most hostile environment that he played in was at DKR at that 11 o'clock kickoff game. So that's going to show you what it means to be able to play in an environment and then be the environment that other people talk about as well.
It's very interesting to me because it is pervasive.
Mm-hmm.
Like the entire conference. I was listening to Todd Gurley, the former NFL running back, talk earlier. They asked him what was the most hostile environment you went to. And this is a guy from Georgia, right?
Yep.
It floored me. I was going to think Alabama, Auburn, Florida, one of those. You know what he said?
Where?
South Carolina.
Really?
It's like,
really?
I was like, what? You know, I literally was, and now that's just one of many teams
Absolutely
in the SEC that Dex is going to have to go to. All right, let's talk a little bit about this football season for the Longhorns, if you don't mind, Fozzy. Longhorns bring back Quinn Ewers, 3-year starter. That's a big plus in Steve Sarkisian's term and tenure heading into this league. New running backs, new wide receivers, new tight end. So outside of Quinn, the nucleus of the offense skill players are all gone.
Yep.
But you bring about the entire offensive line.
Absolutely.
Your thoughts on what Texas looks like offensively going into the SEC?
It'll be another progressive step forward. And if you take a look at Steve Sarkisian and his tenure as offensive coordinator or as a head coach, his quarterbacks have always succeeded whenever they've had multiple years in his system. You give a guy 3 years in the same system underneath Steve Sarkisian's expertise tutelage, he's going to produce immaculate results, which is why Quinn Ewers right now is top 3 as far as Heisman candidates getting ready to enter into the season for the preseason polls right now. And I think that's truly the starting recipes to be able to have Texas playing at the level that a lot of Texas fans think Texas can get to this year. It's going to start with that connection between Quinn Ewers and Steve Sarkisian, and then being able to gel with the receivers that you just mentioned. New nucleus, who's going to be that foundational piece. You don't have Jordan Whittington to bail you out on third downs. You don't have A.D. Mitchell or Xavier Worthy to throw it up whenever you need a big bomb play. You don't have Jatavian Sanders as that security blanket whenever you need to be able to get bailed out, right? Now, who's going to step up and be that person? I think Jonte Cook is going to be the nucleus of this receiver room.
Oh, wow.
Whenever I watched them practice in spring practice this past spring, Jonte Cook, even though he's a true sophomore, looked as though he took on the veteran leadership role as one of the youngest guys on the field. It was him being at the front of the line for all of the drills, being ready, amped up, talking to the other receivers whenever they're getting ready to go into team situations. The intentional nature that he had going through warm-ups, making sure he catches with his eyes, following through, doing his own after-practice type reps and work, and then bringing other guys with him. It didn't matter if they were young or old. They always doing it. Isaiah Bond was right there with them. Matthew Golden was right there with them. You had Lucas Lovejoy. Livingstone. Parker Livingstone right there with them. You had everybody ready to go underneath or behind what Jonte Cook was putting forward. So I think he's going to be a core nucleus guy at the receiver position. Then the 1-2 punch of C.J. Baxter and Jaden Blue is going to be absolutely explosive.
I want to get to Jaden Blue and C.J. Baxter as well as the rest of the running backs. But I go back and I kind of circled and underlined a word you used because it's one that I've heard Steve Sarkisian say over and over: intentional.
Yes.
It's one thing to be a good football player and a good athlete. When they start making that turn into being intentional about what they do in every single way, on the field, off the field, weight room, how you take care of your body, you know, that's when they turn the corner a little bit. And it sounds like Jonte Cook is trying to help other people get that way and may already be that way himself. So I think that's just a fantastic line to use. All right, let's talk running backs. C.J. Baxter and Jaden Blue. I had a friend of mine that played at Texas, went to a spring practice. He goes, if they don't give the ball to Jaden Blue 15 times a game, I don't know what to tell you because he's going to score a touchdown.
I guarantee he'll probably get 15 touches. In a variety and multitude of ways, he will touch the ball 15 times minimum each game. He's that explosive. Now, the way they will feed off of each other will be similar, in my opinion, to the way the Sugar Bowl played out. And they did a phenomenal job in the Sugar Bowl. I still wish we had an opportunity to run the ball even more in that game. Different circumstances predicated what Texas had to do, but the run game is going to be a staple because of the front line, right? These running backs that we're talking about, Jaden Blue and C.J. Baxter, they wouldn't amount to the same thing that we think they can have if they didn't have the staple up front with the 4 returning starters. And then Cameron Williams, who's going to be coming in, who has starting experience in actual game reps underneath his belt. So you got 5 guys that know what it takes to play in a game, be in a hostile environment, respond and react in the ways that you want them to. But then you got guys behind them that are extremely dynamic and explosive. C.J. Baxter has already showcased what he can be. He just got to be healthy. Whenever he's healthy, he is a dude. And then Jaden Blue, just get the ball to him by any means necessary, in any way, form, or capacity, which Steve Sarkisian is going to do. He's always been unconventional in making sure all his players receive adequate amount of touches. Jaden Blue's going to produce. Now, the guy that we're not talking about, and I know you didn't even ask this, Trey Wisner. Steve Sarkisian almost every week during spring football mentioned Trey Wisner in some form or capacity, whether that was from a running back perspective, picking up blocks, catching out of the backfield, obviously running the
special
rock,
teams.
But special teams.
Yep.
If you want to get on the field, you better show me you can be a specialist to be able to contribute to the team. And I think those 3 players are going to be pivotal in the run game and just making sure the offense goes, because they have that type of game-breaking potential.
I misspoke earlier. I said all 5 starting offensive linemen back. Obviously, 4 or 5. Christian Jones, I apologize for that. But Cam Williams stepping in at right tackle. You pointed that out aptly. The thought I had here, you saw the other 2 young running backs, Christian Clark and Jarrett Gibson. Jarrett Gibson. What did you think of those 2 in the brief time that you saw them in spring?
First off, they don't look like freshmen, incoming freshmen. At the time, they both had graduated high school early. They don't look like they are freshmen. They look like they're already juniors, seniors from a physical standpoint, the build that they bring to the table. So that goes to show me that they're ready for a bigger workload. Now, it's because you got Trey Wisner, C.J. Baxter, and Jaden Blue in front of you that they may not see the field very much. And if they do, it may be on a special teams capacity. I love the rules that were changed a few years ago that allows people to play 4 games and still be able to use their red shirt, because you get valuable learning experience. Arch Manning is going to be in that same boat of having valuable learning experience. Hopefully it's not due to injuries, but Texas should win some games, and they should win them handily, if you ask me, with what they have. So that's going to allow those young guys to be able to get that experience early, but they are physically ready to go. Mentally, it's still going to take some time. The adjustment to be able to learn the college game, learn the schemes, learn the blocking protection, which for a young running back is the hardest part, in my opinion, to get before you're able to be trusted on the field, because picking up blitzes, identifying blitzes, and then understanding the protection, that goes key. You won't get put on the field by the chart choice if you're not able to protect the quarterback, because that's the $1 million man. And if you can protect the quarterback, you'll find a way on the field. Otherwise, keep learning, understand what to do, and then start working on your form to be able to understand, how do I pick up these guys? How do I understand what the linemen are asking me to do? Who do I need to go to, and then get into my route to be that outlet for the quarterback? So they've shown great promise and ability already. Taking that next step is going to be the thing for those 2 guys in order to see the field hopefully earlier rather than later.
In this day and age, you said $1 million man, multi-million dollar man.
Yeah,
it wasn't like that for you,
that
was
is
it?
an awesome thing. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not hating. I just wish I can get a little bit.
Well, hey, I want to ask you this: the offense. You think they can average 30 points a game or so, a little bit more?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, this is, in my opinion, 37 and a half points per game type of offense.
Wow, that would be huge.
I think they can be up there for sure.
Okay.
One of the top 5 in the nation, if you ask me.
Oh, wow. Okay. Hey, I know thank you for your time. You've been very gracious. We appreciate it. I want to ask you one question on defense.
Uh-huh.
From what you saw in the spring, do you think the defense will be better overall in the secondary? And how do you think they're going to replace, or will they be able to replace adequately T'Vondre Sweat and Byron Murphy? Those two questions.
I do think they'll be better in the secondary. Adequately replacing those two guys, what does that look like? That's really the real question.
Yep.
You can't replace the talent. You can't replace the production to that specific degree. But I think it works hand in hand. Now, the defense did get shredded a bunch through the air last year because teams knew they couldn't run.
Yeah. They were one-dimensional.
So they were one-dimensional.
Yep.
So that kind of is a skewed stat because teams had to throw the ball in order to get any type of movement on this defense. Without T'Vondre Sweat and Byron Murphy, I think you see a little bit more balance by the approach of the opposing team.
Yeah.
Not necessarily saying that Texas is going to drop off drastically where now they're going to allow 150 yards rushing. No, that won't be the case. But it won't be the same number that led the Big 12 and was top 5 in the country from a yards per rush standpoint.
Yep.
And I think that's going to equate into a more balanced defense because the offense will play a more balanced style of offense.
I just go back to the Kansas State game. Kansas State's a run-oriented, run-heavy team.
Yeah.
They just demanded it.
They didn't even care about it.
Second half,
care about it.
Yeah, it was over with because of those two. So I think it's a fair point.
There's still deficiencies though that need to be addressed.
Yep.
Right. We
fair.
saw in the spring game, it was left, right, throw ball deep. So that still needs to be addressed, which I think obviously Steve Sarkisian gets paid a lot of money to be able to do that. That will get addressed. But it won't be in the same fashion, in my opinion, that we saw during the season because of how dominant the run game was for Texas.
That's good stuff, Fozzy. All right, Fozzy, thank you so much again. I want you to do, if you don't mind, tell folks where they can hear you and see you from now and during football season as well. One more time.
Yeah, so I'm on social media at Fozzy Whit, whether that's X, Twitter, or Instagram. Then I'm also covering college football in the SEC on Sirius XM. And then I'm going to be an analyst and reporter for ESPN covering all of college sports as well.
That's good stuff. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I'm glad. I think everybody here on Texas Football loves it when former players go off and succeed on their own. And great job, buddy.
I couldn't do it by myself. I had a lot of people help me.
All right. Say hook 'em. Take care.